Okay, so let's take a look at this ancient map shown here and what the land used to look like. This map was obtained from the Book of Miracles. As we look at this map and we have it overlaid onto our world, we can see the differences. Now let's take a look at these creatures on the map. The first one is near Africa. This one is coming from our 0.0 on the grid. This is our Brahma energy as it comes to life. Next, we move up and we see the four-headed dragon. This one sits on one of our 8 main angels. The 4 heads represent the group of 4 angels that we see here. Next, we see the griffin creature in northeast Russia. This one is on the lake that literally takes the shape of the creature, as well as the topography resembles the wings. And the last creature is the bear, which is climbing over the star halo. This topography fits the form of the bear, as well as the ocean topography shows the markings of the claws of the bear. Now, let's look at the angels. The angel to the north is on an unknown location at this time. It is in northern Europe and does sit on a 5-point directional change that the magnetics will follow. The angel to the east follows the tropic line, which is a steady flow of quakes that occur along this line. It is giving us our east to west energy to generate some major magnetic push. The angel to the south is representing the angel directly below it. We can see in the topography of the ocean, the push of the energy has used and created direct paths leading up to India. So let's look at the Mount Gall area first. What we see here are quite a few massive volcanoes and calderas in the area. These would have been devastating on the whole Gall area, as recorded in the Book of Miracles. We have the Cantal volcano, some ancient unnamed calderas, Mount Vesuvius, Mount Etna, Santorini, many undersea volcanoes. Also, the Canary Islands, where several volcanoes are recorded to have blown the Canary Islands into the islands we see now. In the Gazelle Peninsula, East New Britain, in Papua New Guinea, there are twin peaks called Vulcan and Terverver. This area was recorded to erupt during the 570 AD time at great force, in which the energy force was felt in 50 miles in all directions. These erupted all through history and are still erupting today. In 856 AD, a massive quake struck a 200-mile stretch of Iran that caused 200,000 deaths. It created what is called the Alpine mountain range, which is still very seismically active. In 526 AD, a quake hit Syria and Antioch, which led to 250,000 deaths and caused the port of Seleucia Pera to rise 1 meter up, after which a fire broke out that destroyed the rest of the buildings that remained. In 365 AD, a quake occurred under the Mediterranean Sea near Crete, which destroyed all of the towns on the island and damaged Greece, Libya, Cyprus, and Sicily. Afterward, a tsunami caused significant damage in Alexandria, Egypt, and other areas. In 79 AD, the great Mount Vesuvius erupted, destroying Pompeii and Herculaneum. Prior to the eruption, it was warned with a series of great quake swarms. This was discovered in 1631 AD while cleaning up from another eruption. But it wasn't completely discovered until the 20th century, when the entirety of the fate of the town was discovered with the bodies of the residents still there, plastered in time, and showing the agonies of their death still on their faces of the entombed bodies. In 1645 BC, Santorini erupted, which wiped out the island, leaving behind the bits we see today. There were no known victims of this disaster, so unlike the other disasters of the area, the people must have heeded the warnings of the quakes preceding the eruption. There were buildings and large untransportable items found, though, to show that people did inhabit the area. In 373 BC, Helike was submerged into the Gulf of Corinth. The ruins of the city could be seen beneath the water for hundreds of years after the disaster. In the past century, the search for Helike began, and other towns have since been discovered along with it. So, as we can see, our history is rich with disasters that shape the world we see today. Now, let's get into some of the science behind the disasters. A VEI is the Volcanic Explosion Index. There were great explosions with a VEI force 6 eruption. A magnitude registered at this capacity will have effects that will cause tsunamis 150 feet tall, and ships 50 miles away will be blasted by the hurricane force winds. This is like setting off atomic bombs from the inside out, to give a comparison. The winds are the energy force. 50 miles is a massive area to feel the force in all directions. With earthquakes, we average a tremble of about 2 to 4s on the Richter scale. When we do get into the 5s, these are the ones that we start to feel. These do occur regularly through the realm. How it works is kind of like a build-up. The cycle runs through on the smaller scale and builds as the energy comes back through. These 5s then lead to 6s. But when we hit the 6 range, typically there's a reset, and we go back to the smaller ones to begin the cycle again. It is not as common to feel the large quakes on a regular basis as in the past. Each number on the Richter scale is 10 times more powerful than the previous number. And to compare to the volcanoes we are speaking about, a typical volcanic eruption, not the monsters we speak about from the past, are comparable to a size 5 earthquake. In the previous video, I spoke about the year without summer, which was caused from several eruptions occurring one after the other. The largest of those during that time was Mount Tambora, which registered at a 7 VEI. Mount Vesuvius was between a 7 and an 8 VEI, and if Yellowstone erupted, it would likely be between an 8 and a 9 VEI, just to give an idea of the scale we're looking at here. Nowadays, we typically on an average stay in the 4 to 5 VEI scale. However, in the past, the eruptions were much larger and ranged around the 8 VEI to 9 VEI magnitude. These larger VEI eruptions included Mount Toba, which is in Indonesia, Lake Taupo, that's located in New Zealand, Wawa Springs, that's located in Utah. Each rise in the VEI raises the force by 10 times the previous. It is scaled not only on the power of the blast, but how high it goes and how much tephra is ejected. So, as I said, these kind of explosions happened on a large scale during different eras in time. As I mentioned, Vesuvius was between a 7 and an 8, which the effect is quite large in comparison to the eruptions we have nowadays. However, this is even small compared to the 10 times larger eruptions that occurred in our ancient past prior. The effects of this type of eruption would be lasting and devastating to our Earth on a very large scale. One last area that I would like us to look at before we get into the effects is the Philippine Sea, which by the topography I would say is a very large system with many, many vents. If the larger known eruptions are around the 8 VEI, we need to think much, much larger for this one. All of these vents are shaping a massive caldera in size that we can't even imagine in our reality. When the epicenter blew, it probably made the islands we see today. Think back to the map we saw. There was land there at one time. Along this entire line of islands in the sea, it's littered with hot springs still today, to show this is still an active and very hot venting area. These vents do release constantly. So, now that we've talked about sizes and scales, let's talk effects. Volcanic ash can travel across the realm and affect the other side of the world. The larger explosions we are talking about would reach the upper atmosphere and cause a darkening of the sun and acid rain. One of the most deadly effects of a volcano is the ash coming from the eruption, which carries poisonous gases that are harmful to humans, plants, and animals alike. A multitude of dangerous particles and gases, such as aerosols, are carried in volcanic ash. Some of these include carbon dioxide. Carbon emissions can contribute to serious climate changes, which can affect humans and animals. It can alter water supplies and weather patterns, changes in growing seasons for food, and threaten coastal communities with increasing sea levels. Exposure to high levels of carbon dioxide can cause incapacitation and unconsciousness, headaches, vertigo, and double vision. Also, inability to concentrate, tinnitus, and seizures. Breathing too much can be life-threatening. Long-term effects of exposure may cause change in bone, calcium, and changes to the body's metabolism. Another is the sulfates, known as sulfur dioxide. It affects human health when it's breathed in. It irritates the nose, throat, and airways, causing coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, or a tight feeling around the chest. The effects of sulfur dioxide are felt very quickly, and most people would feel the worst symptoms in 10 to 15 minutes after breathing it in. It causes mood swings, irritability, rapid heartbeat, deep depression, aggression that is incredibly hard to control. Most humans will be running on a negative due to this toxic chemical. Another is hydrochloric acid, also known as hydrogen chloride. People may be exposed to the ill effects by either breathing it in or allowing it to come in contact with their skin. These dangers are often irreversible. Inhalation of the substance may cause coughing, hoarseness, inflammation, and ulceration of the respiratory tract or chest pain. When hydrochloric acid comes in contact with your skin, you are at risk for severe burns, ulceration, or even scarring. Additional acute health effects include vomiting, diarrhea, and nausea. Tests in rats exposed to the substance did show an increase in fetal mortality and altered reproductive cycles and caused birth defects. And finally, hydrofluoric acid. The vapor can cause severe burns to the eyes, which may lead to permanent damage and blindness. Also is irritating to the eyes, skin, and respiratory tract. Exposure to higher concentrations can result in serious damage to the lungs, and fatal pulmonary edema may develop after a delay of several hours. Brief exposure, around 5 minutes, may be fatal to humans. Ingestion of this can produce severe injury to the mouth, throat, and gastrointestinal tract, and may be fatal. Excessive exposure may affect the brain. On the environment, it acts as a greenhouse gas, influencing great climate change. Larger eruptions of ash can travel hundreds of thousands kilometers downwind from the source, but can affect the climate in places on the other side of the world. Ash is carried into the atmosphere and spreads far from the epicenter and can block out the sun's rays, resulting in a cooler Earth. The ash can also return to the Earth's surface by means of precipitation. Ash particles caught in clouds in the atmosphere fall back down to Earth with rain, snow, and other. Volcanic ash can also contaminate our water supply, which can lead to illness and effects described during these plague outbreaks. All of this info is what is called volcanic winters, which is a reduction in temperatures caused by the ash and droplets of acid and water obscuring the sun. Each of these major eruptions would lead to a 2 to 3 year winter after the eruption. All of this lines up with our minimum periods, showing us the cause of the cold recording during the periods in history. This is also our mudfloods cause. The cause was tsunamis and floods on a scale, as the deluge spoke about in ancient texts. And finally, this is also the cause of the plagues of history. Now, what I'm sure a lot of people may be wondering is there anywhere safe in this world? Well, from what I can tell, I'd say most of Africa would be a safe zone, as well as most of the central and north part of South America. Also, Asia, especially around the Himalayas, as these are highlands. As we can see when we look at the topography, there isn't a lot of extra land under the water in these areas. So yes, safe zones are possible in the highlands, but we have to make sure it's not volcanic areas. To learn this information, we must study the topography and understand there are many what science calls extinct volcanoes that may be dormant, but these are going to come to life again. I don't believe any of these are extinct. They're just lying dormant, waiting their turn to turn back on. These areas should be avoided by populace for survival. So, let me wrap up this bit by adding that I'm not trying to alarm anyone, but simply educate on our Earth's history in a way that mainstream doesn't give, and to educate people that these cycles have been occurring and will continue to occur through time. With the knowledge of how our world works, we can be okay during these cycles when we understand them as the ancients did. Thank you.